actually officially say that we are excited to have Vic Moss and Scott Stoffman here from the DSPA to share with us and give us some updates as to what's happening in the drone industry. So I'm going to go ahead and make you spotlight speakers, and thank you very much.
You can do two of us.
I think I'm going to try.
Kenji sends his apologies. He couldn't make it, some scheduling conflicts.
So, all right. So
I'm the spotlight. What about Scott?
I just realized.
I don't know.
I'm getting there.
Hey,
there we go.
I like this. Hey, I'm on top. This is
Hey,
awesome.
it's not Desi's first time doing this. That's a great track record with the coffee.
All right. Well, give us an update. I am excited.
All righty. Well, I guess let's do a DSP introduction first, maybe. I'm sure everybody here knows, but just in case, and when you play this on the Women in Drones website later, you'll know who we are. Drone Service Provider Alliance. We are an advocacy group for the small and medium-sized drone service providers. Basically, there's no real magic number, but we figure if you have 10 or less employees, you belong in our little camp. The big boys have their numbers, and the big girls have their people in DC and their people at state level, and the money behind them, which is even more important, to be able to get their voice across. And so Kenji and I started this about 2 years ago now. Maybe not quite 2 years. And then we brought Scott in on board. We politely asked him, and he said we'd love to. And so we have Scott on board, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, and it's grown quite a bit work-wise. So you've got I always joke about this. We got 2 lawyers and a guy with an art degree on the board. So, or not on the board, but on the ownership. And we have some great people on the board, including Miss Sharon here. And I don't know if any other board members are on here. Probably not. I know Amy's not going to be. She's got a busy day today.
She's got a busy day with that drone up announcement.
And then Dave Messina is our other board member. So that's us in a nutshell. DSPA Alliance. Is that it? No, I can always do this backwards. That's us up there. DSPalliance.org.
All right.
And Greg is one of our great sponsors at Pilot Institute. So we like getting his name out there. He's a great guy too. So anyway, what would you like us to talk about?
Well, there are so many topics and so many new things, and actually, for one of the things that you do through the DSPA is you have those meetings and updates and podcasts, and I love the conversation that you're doing, and it just helps us to stay informed. Awesome. And so if as far as like what's happening and what's new, what would be the top of your list right now for what's happening in the industry? And I'm going to share your link, by the way.
Okay, coolio. I would say the DAC, or the I guess it's called now. Kenji and I are on the DAC. I am not on the DAC as as DSPA. I'm on the DAC as I'm just going to call it DAC because it sounds better.
Yeah, just for clarification, the Drone Advisory Committee is now the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee because they're bringing in some people from the AAM side of things, getting the air taxi side some representation there going forward.
So just to make it more encompassing, but it's easier to say DAC than AC. And then Scott is very involved in that as well, especially with Kenji on the BV Loss ARC, the Aviation Rulemaking Committee, which is huge. I'll let Scott talk about that a little bit. But that's what we're doing a lot of time. We actually have another meeting tomorrow morning with Paul Hugh, with the K-12 integration, UAS integration to K-12 STEM, and some of y'all have helped me out on that. So I really appreciate that, giving me some input on that. That's huge. So that's kind of what we spend a lot of our time on, and the little things, Ohio and Massachusetts and Florida and Texas and stuff like that. So
awesome. Can you elaborate on those?
Generally speaking, it's balancing these sort of larger national things and federal rulemaking, that sort of thing, with the state and local issues as they pop up and come our way, whether that's directly from members or from people that follow us and reach out to us via Facebook. We do our best to try and stay abreast of what's going on at the state and local level, whether it's positive examples of localities and municipalities that have good language and have good collaboration with drone operators, or there's some negative things that it give us an educational opportunity to work with these legislators, to work with the local drone service providers, give them a chance to introduce themselves to the people who are making the rules, and also to explain, hey, here are some of the really good things that we're doing with the drones. Here's some places where there might be some misunderstandings, where people are worried about drones. And, as Vic always says, when you're out there flying, you're wearing your, advocacy cap, that you are there representing the industry. You are being a steward for sort of all of the best things you can do with drones. And it gives us an opportunity to practice that. And so it's really a great chance for us to work closely with members and other people who are out there like we are, that fly and run their own businesses and just want to be able to do that safely, and to be able to provide all the benefits that we can with drones.
And working locally is really huge as well for us. We've worked with both the Pennsylvania Drone Association as well as the North Coast Drone Association. It's NORCODA, I think they call themselves, in Ohio. So, being able to do some advice and do advising on that aspect of some other organizations as well is kind of cool. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun to see the direct results of that.
Yeah. So in Ohio specifically, we've had a couple of local governments that were worried about peeping Tom, surveillance, those kinds of things with drones, and trying to essentially call out specific laws around drones as opposed to those that they already had on the books, or trying to regulate airspace as opposed to just takeoff and landing. And, we understand that there is a place for state and local representation and basically rules that they are allowed to make around drone operation. But we want to make sure that there's an understanding that the FAA is basically, they are the organization in charge of drones operating in the national airspace system. Because if we end up kind of slicing and dicing who has what powers, it's going to be a nightmare for drone operators, especially the smaller ones like us. If you're operating in one city versus another and the rules are different, it's just going to be a huge headache. And it's either going to slow down adoption, or it's going to take people out of the industry, all completely.
Right.
And so it's been a good opportunity for us to work with those people. And also, hey, maybe we can give our operators locally a chance to work on training, or to work closely with those governments to provide services. And so it's been really cool along the way. And it's a place where the sort of larger national organizations don't necessarily have the people in place, or don't have the knowledge, or don't have those people sort of locally embedded to address these issues, because it may not have as big an effect on their overall membership versus an individual or smaller level. So it's been a great place for us to slide in and get some good work done.
Yeah, it really has, and we're so flexible. Like Scott was saying, we've worked with everything from little bitty towns in Ohio all the way up to we've spoken with the executive office in DC. So it's fun that we'll be able to plug ourselves in flexibly and get that voice of the small. What's going to happen to these 95+% is really hard to nail that number down of drone operators out there.
And
Yes.
I
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Linda just sent me something. Yeah, go ahead, Linda. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead and send that to me. That'd be awesome. Sorry. I can't read and talk at the same time. I'm a guy. I can do one thing and do it well, but other than that, I'm screwed up.
So on your podcast, you've showcased a few times that you've actually had people reaching out to you, and you've provided some very useful help, links, and information that they can go to represent the drone industry in their community as well. And so I don't know if those are things that you can share with us, or if you could at least just provide us some tips as to how we can share in our community as well.
Go for it, Scott.
So a lot of time, if we have specific legislation or rules that are coming up, we want to work with whoever brought it to our attention. We'll read through it. We'll provide advice and sort of commentary about it. And then we've been having essentially a planning meeting prior to those local operators meeting with the lawmakers. So it gives them a chance to kind of lay out what their stance is on the laws that could be on the book. So it's just consider how a law might affect you as an operator and make your story personal, so they understand that whatever law they're trying to pass doesn't just not affect nebulous people. These are small business owners who are working, and there's specific things that this could either help or hurt the way that they're doing their business, and that they serve other, constituents and local people who live in these communities. It's not just about some large commercial interest that doesn't work locally. And so it's taking a common sense approach to the rules that are coming out, and working from the educational perspective on how we are safe as operators, that, when we're doing this, it's not just for fun all the time. There are, we're commercial, we're 107s, we have liability insurance, we have policies and procedures in place, and we take this very seriously. And that a lot of the times when somebody's bringing in a drone, it's to help make, doing something either better or faster or safer, or a combination of all of those things. And so think about essentially the same way that you might talk to a potential client is the same way that you would work on talking to a local government, because you understand the benefits that you can provide as a drone operator. And you also understand things that do or don't work when you're out there flying. So it's just being reasonable and having an open conversation. And so it's not necessarily like a specific boilerplate set of language or things to work on, but the FAA is also a great resource, whether it's working with your, FAA safety team drone pros, or looking at the FAA, the drone zone with the amount of information that they have there, and just trying to kind of lay out, here are the specific guidelines and rules that we operate under as drone ops here in the United States. And sometimes it's just enlightening for people that don't really know that much, other than I have a constituent that's mad at me and they're complaining about a drone, and they may not know the complete story about all these great things that you can do with drones. So it's another, as I keep saying, it's an opportunity for pilots and business owners to go out there and educate.
Yep. And it's more than just education about the drone aspect of the law. We talk a little bit about how to act and how it's, don't really be nervous, which I know it's hard to tell somebody not to be nervous because you're nervous. I remember the first time I testified in front of a city council. It had nothing to do with drones, actually. It was a rezoning thing. I sounded like I was going through puberty again. My voice had this vibrato. So in trying to get through to the people who are going to, they're just normal people. Your local folks are a lot easier to talk to than your senators or than the office of the president or whoever you're going to talk to. They're just normal people. They just want to hear what's going on, and don't argue with them. So yeah, so that's what we've been doing. We did
it's
Ohio,
keeping an open mind and being prepared helps. It helps take away some of that nervousness. That if you need some notes to refer to, it's a great place to go. Or whether you want to write out the whole thing because that works for you, or bullet points, or that kind of, just helps keep you sort of on track to get your point across. Because a lot of the time you may have a limited amount of time in which to speak, because they want to let everybody give a chance to talk. And so it's just understanding sort of the guidelines around the specific kind of meeting that you're going to be in, who your audience is going to be, and tailoring what you're going to say to that forum.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you share with us a couple of positive outcomes that you've had?
Sure. Well, let's talk about Hamilton, Ohio, first of all. That was great. We had actually Norcota reached out to us and said, hey, this is what's going on. We sat down. In this case, it was one city council member who was trying to make the news because it was an election cycle. That was basically what it boiled down to. And he was doing it was just dumb. I mean, I don't really have a better way to put it than it was just a dumb rule that would have really hurt not only the drone pilots, but the drone owners who were just doing recreational stuff. And so we sat down, we met with there were some local guys too that were really into it as well. So we met with them beforehand. They actually met in not really executive session. I can't remember exactly what they called it, but in a non-city council session, sat down and talked with them. It was publicly broadcast and they said, okay, that makes sense. So I think December, is it the 9th? I think they're going to have their next city council meeting and they're going to bring this back up again and make it less stupid, I guess.
And they actually read a statement that Vic wrote directly into the record.
And that was, I need to write shorter statements because they look page 3.
That's good. Less stupid. I love that.
If we could do everything less stupid, we'd be awesome. We wouldn't need us. And then we did the same thing again in Brook Park, Ohio. Something in the water in Ohio. We don't know what it was. But that tends to happen. One locality will do something and then another locality will say, oh, look what they're doing. Let's do it. Which is why it's so important to start at the local level. So you don't have that snowball effect of regulations.
And, part of the other things that we're working on is looking at an assessment of the laws in different states. There are a handful, I think we've got about 17 states here in the US that have what's called a state level preemption law, where essentially any law around drones has to be made at the state level. and cities and municipalities cannot make their own laws around that. And it helps give sort of a uniform picture and a uniform view of rules that as an operator you can go by. And so we've been sort of pushing around and looking at that. And not all of those kinds of laws are created equal. And part of what we're working on is doing an assessment of those, finding language that we think sounds good and makes sense, and then shopping that around to saying, hey, if you're looking to make laws in your state or in your city, then why don't you look towards these as a good example? And right. Here's why. And here are the pieces that are bad, and here's why.
Right. Yeah, we actually, it's funny because I've got this right here. It's, I don't know, about 12, 13, 14 pages back to back. And it's exactly what this is. I don't know if I can get this to work or not. I can't. Say good language, bad language. And that's what we're working on right now. We're going to go through, I've got to go digest all this stuff, and then we'll all sit down and talk about it. And try and put out a, not a template, report, white paper, I mean, whatever you want to call it, about what to do when you want to do something at the state level for state preemption. Because you're going to get a fight from the localities. Because they don't want to lose control of what they can do. Arizona's has a phenomenal state preemption. I said invoice. It's not an invoice. What is it? Law about it. So we're gonna do a lot with Arizona, and there's a whole bunch of them that they just basically blow grits. That it's like, really. But a lot of them are really old too. It's amazing how many of them were made in 14 and 15, and maybe a little bit in 2016, and nothing's ever happened. Florida's got one that's really dumb, which something's going on in Florida that we're really going to hopefully work out here pretty soon. It's at the court right now. Some arraignments have been handed down, but it hadn't become public yet. So we're looking on that. And some other ones are just really kind of dumb.
Well, we've been trying to also make some positive out of some negative we've seen a lot of drones being shot at, whether they're actually hit or not, and then sort of figuring out what you can do as a drone op to then make sure that the right people, are brought to justice, whether that is helping you get back into your business, that they are punished from a legal perspective, and who can help you with that. Most people don't understand that the FAA is not a criminal, procedural organization. They can't file a criminal case. They can bring civil penalties and things like that. But when it comes down to actually prosecuting somebody, it needs to be through the DOJ or the FBI or an organization like that. So we've been working with some people, whether that, the actual operators, the FSDOs, and local FBI offices, to try and figure out what's the best path forward. And one of the things that we put together was a card on sort of what to do if you've been shot at or been assaulted while you're out on a job, and just kind of the best way to pull your thoughts together after you've made sure that you and anyone you're with are safe. And, it's something that we hope that it doesn't happen to you when you're out there flying, but we know that it is a reality. And what Vic was talking about in Florida is, the public piece of it is that we know that there was an individual there who shot at a sheriff's drone and actually shot it down. It caught on fire. Luckily, nobody got hurt. But he's a multiple felon, and this is, I believe, the first time that they've brought federal destruction of aircraft charges against an individual in the United States for shooting down a drone. And hopefully going forward, we'll see some balance around that it won't need to be a police drone, it won't need to be a multiple time felon. And we understand that the kinds of repercussions that come out of doing that will depend based on the situation. And so we've been trying to find a better way to get through that process than just sort of nobody got hurt, the drone didn't get hurt, and, we're not going to do anything about it.
Well, actually, that's not the one I was talking about. That's the one I've been emailing back and forth today. I don't know if you got your emails today.
I have a question.
But something else. Who said I have a question?
I have a question.
Linda, yes.
I think it's Sheila. Or Linda?
Piggybacking on what Scott was just talking about, and Vic, you're aware that I was going to be writing you a little a short story on the event that I had. Along that card that you're creating for what to do after, can you work out some language or some pointers, talking points, I don't know what you want to call them, about how to speak to somebody in the moment, to de-escalate a conversation? in the experience I had, the guy really wasn't interested in learning about the fact that what he was talking about was a federal crime. It wasn't probably a good idea for me to try to educate him. And I de-escalated it as best I could, and he moved on. And of course, I'm still shaking, and I called 911, but after he was gone. But maybe there's some language that didn't immediately come to mind at the time that you can help us with.
Very nice segue. Thank you. We did not pay her for this. I just posted in the link one of our articles. It's called Mayday, Mayday, Someone Shut Down My Drone. Real original, real original title. But you can read that. Our newsroom, I think we call it, is lots of that
Newscast.
kind of stuff with newsroom, not the newscast, where we post our articles on the website.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah. There's some that I think, if I remember correctly, has a lot of that wording. There's also
Okay.
a link to download a little card that we made.
Okay.
That has that stuff on there. And we actually had a bunch of those printed out. We gave out a bunch when we were at Commercial UAV. And if we make it to Expo this year, we're going to do the same thing.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, that is really a good resource for that type of thing, because it has become a big issue. Obviously, the first thing you do is get as safe as possible, as quick as possible. If that means running away and locking yourself in your car and let your drone crash, so be it. But calling 911 in the situation you're into is also a really good way to handle it.
And then we had a question from Sheila asking, would a drone being shot down automatically rise to a federal level for criminal side as it's an aircraft? And the answer to that is yes. It's under 18 USC 32, which is outside of the FARs, which are outside of the FAA jurisdiction, which is why they can't prosecute it. But yeah, it is a federal crime to destroy an aircraft, which drones are considered an aircraft. It's just a question of how that process will go forward, because we don't really have a kind of uniform way that those responses are done yet.
Right.
And we're working on that.
The last two DAC meetings we had, I actually laid down the gauntlet with Jay Merkel about putting together some sort of joint task force between the FAA, DOJ, FBI, whoever, the DOI, Office of Inspector General. I mean, all this, or DOT, sorry. All these different agencies need to come together and be on the same playbook. That nothing has materialized from that yet. So we're hoping something soon does. I'm going to reach back out to Jay again, actually, now that I'm thinking about it this afternoon, because I know he's busy, and obviously we've been busy, but it's something that really needs to be addressed. I think having the sheriff's office drone brought in by the grand jury, having a federal indictment handed down will help. But it needs to be more. It needs to be active, not reactive. Proactive, not reactive, sorry.
So can we, also in the very beginning, you had mentioned about the STEM programs and such like that the DFA is, you're currently a part of, I guess, on the committee. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Because that's a very exciting topic.
It's fun.
Moving forward.
Kenji actually suggested this be that topic on our very first DAC meeting, right at the end during open discussion. And then the next one, they went ahead and formed a task group. So I'm part of that task group with the Hugh Foundation, HSU, Dr. Paul Hugh. And it's what we're trying to do is the aviation community, especially on the manned side, is aging out. So pilots are aging out, mechanics are aging out. And all of a sudden we're going to have I had to plug my computer in. All of a sudden we're going to have some issues with nobody's there to fill the vacancies as people move on. And we're hoping, and at least the plan is, that if you introduce UAS into the K-12 STEM programs, that's going to spark that love of aviation and really get people to realize, hey, you know what? It's not just having fun on DRL, something along those lines. This is an actual career. And not only is it drones, flying drones, but you got to make drones, you got to design drones. Oh, by the way, I can fly full-size aircraft as well. And so just trying to really spark that fire with the love of aviation into everything from K through 12, really. We figured about 4th or 5th grade, maybe 3rd grade is really when you can start instilling and where those light bulbs start going off. But it starts as early as kindergarten. So that's the plan. We have our report, I think, in January, where we'll give it to the FAA in the AC meeting in February. I think that's what it is. And what the FAA does with it from there, we'll see. But there's a lot of moving pieces on that, everything from funding to figuring out what the best way to do it is. And it's not for FAA to construct the criteria or the curriculum. It's just for the FAA to really push the UAS into K-12. So put the power of the government behind it, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, to really kind of help people understand that, hey, you know what? Drones are cool. Drones are good. And drones can really make you love the aviation industry. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing.
And it is moving us forward in a positive direction in so many different ways. And so such a value, such a value. So I want to circle back really quick, like, because Linda had another question, talking a little bit more about the DSPA and some of the fantastic things that you are doing. And so for one, if somebody was wanting to become a member, could you tell us a little bit about the membership and some of the positive things that the website has to offer right there?
So the website's free access. It's you know, Scott, you want to talk about this? I talk a lot.
Yeah, sure. You know, so right now we have a monthly membership dues set up. I believe our entry is a $20 a month membership. And that gives you access to the business listing area that we have. It gets you on the newsletter with us. And then one of the other things that we really like that we're getting back to because we've been super busy, we haven't been as consistent as we'd like to, is a membership call where it gives our membership a chance to speak to us directly, raise any questions or issues that you've got, or, you know, talk about positive things that you have going on. And we want to, going forward, have a chance to highlight some of our members as we do in our publications, whether that's, you know, on the newscast or, you know, on our newsletters as we push them out. And it's just, for us, the member access, it helps. Essentially, the reason that we bring money in, we're on all volunteer network currently right now. But when we want to be able to go and travel for things as the country starts to open back up, it's to help us defray those travel costs for being able to meet with lawmakers or being able to go to those ACT meetings and things of that nature, and to represent the industry and our members, you know, out and about, and not to be essentially, you know, having to pay out of pocket ourselves for those types of events. So it gives us a way to put a face on the interest of our members and of the other small and medium drone service providers who are out there and may not have representation. And, you know, to kind of turn back to Vic's point about sort of the traditional and crewed aviation side and those expanded operations that we're doing with drones, Kenji actually, I think yesterday, got an exemption approved to be able to fly a drone over 55 pounds. And so a lot of what we do is we look at ways that we can kind of expand what is capable under 107 by essentially bringing in knowledge of how things exist in crewed aviation and sort of stepping the industry forward and stepping the thought process forward about what it is capable of being done with drones safely. And so the biggest thing for what came out of Kenji's recent exemption is that flying a drone over 55 pounds, you don't actually have to be a private pilot. And that's, I think, the first exemption of its kind. You have to have the Part 61 knowledge exam, just so you understand sort of what are the kinds of hazards or, you know, situations that you would face and things that you need to consider flying a drone of that size. And also for his work specifically, flying on closed sets and things like that, he can actually fly within, I believe it's 100 feet of people who are not crew. You know, but it's just cool to see that kind of steps forward in the industry, that sort of evolution in what it is that we're capable of doing with drones. And hopefully it opens up more opportunities for people that are around doing this, that are either new entrants to the industry or who have been around for a long time. You know, we are always looking for ways to improve what you can and cannot do with drones.
Which also brings the BB Arc and also Task Group 11, where you two are both really involved in that, where the BB Arc, obviously, you know, being able to get those beyond visual line of sight flights, whether it's 20 miles or 1 mile, or in my case, the Mini about 200 feet. So it's, you know, being able to to actually define BV loss and what we can do with it, whether, like I said, extended or way out there. And then also the safety aspect, where's the safety case when these rules are being made? So that was never really part of any of the rulemaking process when it comes to the FAA, because all they had to work with was manned safety mitigations, safety aspect. And obviously with UAS, it's a whole totally different ball of wax. So now that report's also going to be done beginning of next year, if I remember correctly, for that task group. And the FAA can sit down and say, we need to do this, make this rule, but let's use a safety case and build from there rather than build a rule and see what it does in the safety case. I think that's probably a good way to describe that, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's been great. If you don't know much about the Beyond Visual Line of Sight arc, Sherrod is on that with us, as well as Dave. And essentially they split it into two pieces of one set of working groups looking at sort of safety, looking at the market, looking at environment, security, all of those kinds of things from a conceptual perspective. And we had, I think it was 90 members of industry and government and the FAA all kind of working together in those subgroups, and then taking those concepts and moving forward into what would it look like for us to make recommendations as a group that could then potentially be turned into a Beyond Visual Line of Sight notice of proposed rulemaking that would come and hopefully get us to a point where we have an easier time getting to that sort of, not sort of one-off approvals and exemptions required to do Beyond Visual Line of Sight work, whether that's at the local Beyond Visual Line of Sight level or at the, sort of very, very far flung Beyond Visual Line of Sight level, and understanding that there are differences based on the different types of operations. And so we wanted to make sure that it's not going to be something that's completely out of reach for the small and the medium-sized commercial ops, but that there also is a place for those sort of more complicated, large commercial ops. And, hopefully it helps us just keep incrementally moving the industry forward. And we're glad to be a part of that. And, if Kenji, he is not afraid to speak up and provide his opinion, and I'm there in the background to, help back him up. And it's been a great experience so far. And I'm looking forward to that report coming out and seeing, the final recommendations that we get, what the FAA does with them, and how the industry takes them on, how the public takes them on, because so much of what we do is about public perception and understanding and helping sort of lead the public along on what are the great things that we can do with drones, and getting past that knee-jerk reaction. I saw somebody posted in a Newsweek article about how, some of the negative things, and so much of how drones are portrayed in the media is very negative. And I think the more and more positive examples that we can put out there, the better off that we're going to be positioned as an industry.
Yeah, we'd like to see the BV loss waiver go the way of the daylight waiver. We had to have the flight night, we had to have a waiver, and all of a sudden the FAA says, you know what, having those waivers in place has proven this is a safe thing. We don't need the waiver anymore. We just need a little bit of training. It'd be lovely, it'd be awesome to have local BV loss as one of those kind of fall into that same boat where we don't need that waiver anymore. Because we all fly BV losses. We can't not, unless you're FPV, but even then we won't get into the technical aspects of that. If behind the building, just a little bit ways away, 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet away, there's a chance if you're flying something smaller than Inspire that you've lost it. So we all fly BV loss, and we all do it safely, although some people more safe than others. But that would be nice if then that is not technically an illegal flight at that point. And I think with the work that Kenji and Scott have done and the input they've had for the small and medium sized drone service providers, that's going to happen. It has to. Definitely.
Agreed.
Johnny wrote precedent ? What does that mean? If you
Oh,
unmute
you know
yourself
what?
and ask.
He had posted something about a story that he saw from San Francisco where
Don't
they
see
had attached a toy to the drone and was bonking people on the head at a public event. And so,
Hey, there's Adrian. Hey, Adrian, how you doing, man?
hi, Adrian.
I have not heard of that. I guess technically, if you're not flying over them, it's probably not illegal if you're just messing with people, but it's stupid. That brings up just because we can doesn't mean we should aspect of drones.
But it's another thing, if you're hitting people, it's probably a reckless operation,
Yeah,
even if
yeah.
you're not directly over them. And so
Exactly.
some of the local laws that you have in place is, reckless operation of an aircraft and things like that, or just general reckless endangerment. Same thing that, most local law enforcement would use if somebody shoots at your drone if they don't have specific laws around that. Yeah, and like we always say, there are things you can do and there are things you should do as a drone op. And so it's understanding the fine line between that. And one of the other organizations that I am a part of is the AEVSI Lone Star chapter. I saw that Adrian posted his link in here for the drone swap meet, just a place that we put together a space for our members and just people in the local community to come out and sell old equipment, buy old equipment, talk drones. And so we have one coming up next weekend on Sunday.
We're going to do that in Denver one day. First time I saw you do
Yeah,
that, it's like,
I'm
we're going to do
thinking
that one
we
day.
need to do that in San Diego.
Oh, you guys need to do it in SoCal. Absolutely.
Yeah, we do, Jim. That would be awesome.
Yeah, Jim, sell all your old stuff, man.
He could have a swap meet by himself.
You have to mean the old stuff I'm still using.
Yeah, that stuff.
Right.
That stuff. What else we can
So,
talk about?
when we are talking about BVLOS,
Mhm.
EVLOS, and that type of stuff, you're right. We do beyond visual line of sight in temporary situations when we're flying. And it is based on the different types of missions that we are flying at the time. And so as we're thinking about that type of an operation, when a lot of it is around, not all of it, but there's a lot of it that's around infrastructure. Do you have anything that you could suggest for safe flights for doing infrastructure? Is there a safe distance? Is it based on property ownership or anything that way? Can you maybe elaborate some things that way?
What the issue is that in 2016, and then it was reiterated in 2018, that the FAA needs to have what's called 2209, if I remember correctly, Scott, where they're supposed to define critical infrastructure and work with the DHS and figure out what actually is critical infrastructure. The trouble is, I think they were given 180 days or whatever it was. So obviously they blew that deadline out of the water. And Johnny, I remember that story. He sent me direct message. Says, yeah, that was definitely a reckless flight. It's what happens is there's this void in DC about critical infrastructure. They haven't defined what CI is yet, so the states have taken it upon themselves to define what it is. And they say, well, you can't fly within, you can't surveil, you can't take pictures of their definition of critical infrastructure. Texas is bad about that. Florida has done a really poor job of that. Or Ohio is working on a law, but it actually makes sense in the fact that it says you can't take pictures in furtherance of a crime. So they added that in furtherance of a crime and made it actually a usable, not a First Amendment issue. But I think once we can get 2209 actually passed, and it's not a high priority, that'll help a lot. What, I mean, does that make sense to, is that basically what it was? Scott?
Essentially what 2209 would do is put up these sorts of kind of like temporary flight restrictions or bubbles. It would give airspace restriction around what is defined as critical infrastructure, and the owners of those pieces of property and infrastructure would have to apply to the federal government to get on a list. It's the same thing that as what's happened with, certain national landmarks and, military bases, things of that nature where security might be sensitive. And I think from our perspective, it's okay if you're going to do that, but there needs to be a process for clearance to be able to operate in those spaces. And part of that will come with, who holds the responsibility over either approving or denying access to that airspace. And, what's the reasoning for preventing access to that airspace or granting access. And so we always want to make sure that if it's, if security is an issue, that there are common sense security regulations in place, so that we're not necessarily seeing something like a country of origin drone ban for operations in specific spots, and that there are mitigations that you can put in place. Some may be, of higher value than others, whether, hey, I'm flying an American-made drone that has all, NDAA compliant parts on it versus I'm flying something that may be from China and people are worried about that, and getting to the heart of why are they worried about it and what are the specific things that they're worried about. And if you're working with that kind of client or working that kind of a space, then those are things that you need to address. And so it's just making sure that we're not just allowing anybody to set up this sort of bubble of access, like something you might see around like the TFR that exists around Disney, where they hold the keys to allow access or deny access to that. And it's, sort of an ancient TFR that's been around for a while. And then there are other like really great examples of safe specific ones like TFRs for large sporting events. And then there are ways to work around those and understanding the right channels to work through to be able to provide, data for a client or for the NFL or for somebody. And it's just, how can we find paths that make sense where someone wants to restrict access to the NAS?
Yeah, because you have there's a more than one state law that includes cell towers as critical
Yep.
infrastructure, power distribution sites as critical infrastructure. You can't fly within X or over X, and it's like if you're flying residential properties, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be near a cell tower. There's a pretty good chance you're going to be near a power distribution center. So it needs to be formalized, and it needs to be just all the same, so everybody knows what the rules are. The dreaded patchwork quilt of rules, as the FAA puts it.
Yep.
So I just want to remind everybody, we are getting near the end of the time that we have. And so if anybody has any questions or anything, boy, this is definitely the chance to shout out and ask your questions.
You like helping.
So looking at your notes there, Vic, what else is on topic for you?
Well, we're still going to be working on trying to figure out what to do about the whole country of origin ban that Scott brought up. It's now part of the DoD Reauthorization Act, I believe. There's a couple of senators that seem to want to politicize this aspect of drones, and so we need to figure out what to do about that. Working with Holyoke, Massachusetts, of all things. This just started up today. Actually, it started back in October, but it was an election cycle, so we didn't get the answers. This is perfect example of people reaching out to us. One of the Pilot Institute students reached out to us, said, "Hey, I'm near Holyoke. Holyoke has a law that says I can't fly over property without permission." And the funny thing is, this was done in 2000, I want to say 16, the first time. I spoke with the city council on that, and they said, so they did it anyway. But now they have in the federal district of Massachusetts, of all things, they have the Singer v. Newton ruling that has federal precedent now that states the FAA controls the airspace. So I reached out to them again this morning, the city council and mayor and people in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And one of the director of legislation, I think, got back to me pretty much right away. Said, "Hey, we're going to talk to our lawyers. We'll get with you after the first of the year." So we may sit down and have a meeting with that. So just because something's done doesn't mean it's permanent. So we're going to try and work that through again, because we didn't have anything to work with in 2016, I think it was. Now we do.
Another thing that we had brought to our attention, actually, I got via Adrian, which was via Chief Wayne Baker, was that the city of Austin and the film permitting office, that essentially they are wanting any commercial 107 drone operation to fill out a form with all sorts of details and information in it prior to flying. And, so we want to make sure we can get a dialogue open up with them to understand sort of what's at the core of why they have that. And, as I mentioned before, we understand that, cities and counties have an interest in sort of takeoff and landing restrictions. But what is the common sense setup about, okay, this is what you're doing when you're flying? And, is there, a place where there's a bar kind of set where it's, I'm flying and doing a commercial inspection versus I'm flying and filming a television show or a commercial or something like that, and we need help from police, or we need to kind of cordon off areas and stuff like that might be sensitive. And, who wants to handle all of that data? Who's going to review it? How quickly is there going to be a response on it? Is there going to be revenue generated for the city behind that? And kind of just understanding the mechanics of how a regulation like that, or a requirement like that would work in a city, and what end they're trying to accomplish by having rules like that.
I posted a link to the Austin regulation, the film permitting process in the chat. So you can look at that and you can look at it and go, why? Some of it makes sense, perfect sense. I don't have a problem with it, but some of it's just like asinine. Like most of them do, they don't understand what that really happens. What that ordinance, what that rule is going to do to not just the small operator, but some of the big time folks as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Kenji mentioned to us is that when they do location scouting and stuff like that for these commercial shoots, it's usually not with that much lead time. It might be a week, it might be 2 days.
Mhm.
And so if they have another foreign they've got to consider, or another hoop that they have to jump through, they either might not shoot in a certain place or they may just miss it. And so, how can we make sure that we're operating safely and that we are working collaboratively with the cities and really understanding, like I said, sort of the heart of the issue, why something like this exists and what they're trying to accomplish with it.
Right. Sheila posted something funny. They're creating a new job for a family member to process the forms. So maybe, you never know.
And so, the sort of inelegant way is we play a lot of whack-a-mole when it comes to rule things that they come up, people shoot stuff our direction, and we do our best to address it.
Yeah. And sometimes we just don't, nothing works. I live in Denver, for those of you who don't know, and Denver Film Commission, if you apply for a permit, and it's got a drone, you will be denied. It's getting sort of better, but you have so many different aspects of the safety of mitigations. If you want to use a drone on a film permit, then we just don't have it done here. If you're going to shoot a movie or something or commercial in Denver, you're probably not going to be able to fly a drone. The trick to that is if it's less than 3 people on the crew, you don't need a permit. So you send everybody home except you, the VO, and the client. You go fly your drone. So there's ways around it, but that's stupid.
So you found the perfect workaround.
Oh, trust me, I've got that ordinance printed out in my policy and procedure manual and highlighted. That spot's highlighted. Nope, don't need one.
Also, can you share a little bit about what Kenji's doing and how he's a part of Oregon and that committee? Yep. He's working with the Oregon Wildlife Commission, the Parks Commission, Parks. Yeah. Right. They want to include drones in their use cases. Their Parks director says, we understand that drones are a recreation. We want to be able to do that. We want to be able to welcome them into our parks. And obviously drones don't need to fly everywhere. I think we can all agree on that. There are certain times, there are certain places drones have no business being in the air. And one of the things that they brought in was, hey, you know what? You can fly a drone in the areas we tell you. Whereas opposed to the way it really should work is we can fly a drone unless you tell us we can't. Nesting areas, wilderness areas, the parking lot at the visitor center, you probably shouldn't throw your drone up. The whole reason that we fly drones is take pretty pictures. If we have to fly in this little 500 by 500 foot grid in the middle of a park, what's the point? So he's working with that. He's got some good feedback. I'm not sure where we are on that, or where he is on that, I should say. Have you heard anything, Scott?
Not since, not more than what you just said.
Okay,
and
so
then
go ahead, sorry.
No, and then, one of the other things we touched on the country of origin ban and, how that would affect industry and like being able to fly over like Bureau of Land Management land where, some of these great car commercials and things like that are shot with these beautiful backgrounds. And if you can't fly a foreign drone over federal lands, then, that's an issue that's kind of an unintended consequence and considering that. And on the Oregon side, like Vic said, it's a lot easier for us to understand these are the areas they don't want us to fly and here's why, versus these are the areas they think are okay for us to fly, unless it's just really open.
Yeah. Good point.
Yep. Thanks, Jim, for answering Tony's question.
There you go.
Hey, we don't need to be here. We'll just let Jim do it.
All right.
So
well, we only have
really
about 5 minutes left. And so if you could both share how we can help, what can we do for DSPA? How can we be involved? How can we be ambassadors for the community? And what are some of your needs?
Money.
Okay, there you go.
Let's boil it down. We don't
get
paid for this, as Scott said. We're an all-volunteer organization. Everybody else on the ACT is part of a large organization or a large company. They not only get their expenses paid, they get paid while we're there. We're not paying ourselves while we're there, but we do want our expenses paid. We have things like website maintenance and things like that. But also just information. So much what we get is sent to us via either emails, which we're so easy to find. Our emails are on the website. We can share them as well if you want. But see if I'm not going to type and do it at the same time. Let us know what's going on in your area. Let us know how we can help, state, local, whatever. Parks. and things like that. Just let us know. Keep an eye. Another really good thing you should probably do at the local area is about every month or so, your city council, if it meets monthly, will list what they're talking about at the next city council meeting. Pop on there when they, ask for notifications. You can sign up for notifications. They'll notify you when they publish what they're going to talk about, their agenda, and go in there and make sure nothing has to do with drones. And that's probably a good way to keep an eye on things there. But yeah, membership is great. And just feed us information that we can help you and tell us how we can help you.
Awesome.
Anything else, Scott?
Scott, you have anything to throw in there?
No, I mean, we're always looking for ways to grow the information that we have coming in, the membership that we have, and then the topics that we talk about when we do things like newscasts and, or newsletters. If you have a topic you'd like us to address it a little bit more in depth, it helps for us to have those ideas come our way and gives us a chance to then do some research or work with you collaboratively to put something out.
Right. And Adrian just posted, support Women in Drones, DSPA, AUVSI, all those organizations, because we all actually do get together and work together and combine forces and try and get the word out. Even if it's something like Commercial Drone Alliance, we're working with Lisa to try and, well, we're supposed to be working with Lisa. We've been busy about trying to figure out how that we can work alongside CDA. CDA is the voice of the big players. And if they have something going on where they need the voice of the mass of small players, then we can provide that as well. So collaboration is huge. Thank you, Adrian.
And it's not that hard to open these doors to legislators and regulators. And when you come and you say, hey, look, we represent the interests of 17,000, 20,000, however many drone pilots it is, that turns heads and it gets them listening. And so, the more that we can personalize those stories, either from what we do ourselves or from what our members are doing, others in the industry are doing, it really helps others sort of take heed and understand kind of why there might be consequences they hadn't thought about, or why there might be great things that we're doing.
And I really appreciate that you're reachable, that if somebody does have a question.
My wife doesn't always, but thank you for that. I have a very understanding wife. I love you very much, Chris.
Okay, Vic is always reachable. And so that's huge, though, when somebody is trying to go through something and they do have a situation or an issue. It's great having somebody that they can reach out to. And you also do your newscasts, like you were saying, and there's ways that we all can be informed through what you're doing. And so it's really appreciated. And so being able to have that funnel for information is fantastic.
Well, thanks for what you guys do too, gals. Sorry, Women in Drones. It's pretty cool what y'all are doing as well.
And, at the end of the day, we understand that we don't know how to do everything, or we don't know all the information about stuff. And so having connections in the industry or in the government is great for us. And so we are more than happy to point you on or direct you on to the right connection to help you figure out what it is that you need figured out, and that so much of this industry is just us working together. I think it's like a co-opetition is kind of the way we like to talk about it. It's not a zero-sum game. Like there's plenty of work out there for everybody. And there's plenty of people that have the same issues that you might have, as much as you may not think they do.
Yes.
A local voice is just so important in situations like this. So never underestimate the power of a local voice.
Yes. Yes. Look, Izzy's already signing up.
Izzy, I love you, brother.
All right.
Met Izzy in Albuquerque the first time. He's such a cool dude.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for everything. Vic did put his contact information in there. Scott's going to do that right now. I can see him typing.
At DSPalliance.org, and you can find us. Go on any of the Facebook groups and you can find me and Scott.
Yes. And definitely I'll put the link to their webpage on there again, so you can check them out. And we just truly appreciate what you're doing. And thank you very much for coming on our Coffee Connection and sharing. And we just hope that you have a really good day from here out. And
you all do too.
Great.
We didn't get to break out though. Those are the fun times here on Tuesday mornings. Those breakout sessions are kicking the pants.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We love them. We love that networking. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And we have,
don't forget to save the chat
next week. Yes, there's a lot of valuable information in there. Don't forget what Adrian had posted as well. So 3 dots lower right-hand corner, save that chat, right? And all right, we'll see everybody next week.
See you later. Fly safe.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. That kind of wraps it up.